Okay, boys, we're going to look at fractional indices today, and let's have a review of the fractional index laws. Now, these have been new for 5.2 students, so let's just go through them. A to the power half is equal to the square root of a. So you would have seen the square root notation before. So square root of a in index form is a to the half. The cube root of a in index notation is a to the power of a third. And the nth root of a in index notation means a to the power of 1 on n. Now, more generally, if you have some fraction, m over n is the power, then a to the m over n is equal to the nth root of a all to the power of m, or you could write it as the nth root of a to the m. Okay, so these are the four main index laws for fractional indices. We're going to use them down here. Okay, so if we look at the first one, which is 49 to the half. So if we're going to use those index laws, we could think, without a calculator of course, we could think of 49 to the half as the square root of 49. Okay, because power of a half is the same as square root. That gives me the answer is 7. Here this is power of a third, so I'm looking at this index law here. So I could think of this as the cube root of 27. Okay, cube root 27 is 3. Now writing this in index form, it's going to be 3x minus 2 all to the power of a half. Okay, so that's using the index laws above. Now, what about this one? A plus b to the power of 1/7. We're using our index laws. We're going to write this with a square root inside the brackets. That's the 7th root. Okay, a plus b to the power of 1/7. So we're using this rule here. The nth root of a, the nth root of a can be written as a to the 1 on n. Okay. All right. Now let's have a look at these. Try and do these without a calculator. Now you could use your index laws to work these out. I think it's going to be easier not to involve thirds here. So I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to write 8 as 2 to the power 3. And this will be all to the power of 4/3. Right? And 4/3 times 3, well, that's just going to be 2 to the power 4, won't it? Because the 3's will cancel. Okay, so you could put that in there if you wanted to. The 3's will cancel when you multiply those powers together, just to give you 2 to the 4. And that gives you an answer of 16, 2 to the 4. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. What about for the next one? 125 to the negative 1/3. So because it's a negative power, we're going to first write it down as a positive power. There we go. And then you could write that in third form, which would be the cube root of 125 up there. And cube root of 125 is just 5, so your answer is 1/5. All right. Now there is another way you could have done that, so I'll do that alternatively. So now what you could have done when you come down to this step here, you could have done this. Put down or 1/. Now this time I'd say, look, 125 is 5 cubed to the power of 1/3. So I'm just going straight from here to here. I'm not worrying about this step here. Multiply the powers, and you get 1 over 5 is your answer. So that's an alternative. Now, for this law here, there is a law which really should be in the negative power section. And it goes like this. If I've got A over B, all to the negative n, it's the same as B over A, all to the n. So it's actually one of our index laws. It's not a fractional index law, but it's one of our index laws. So that should be written down on your notes. So the way that it applies to this, of course, is I'm going to flip the fraction and change the sign of the power. Okay, so now that's going to be 3 cubed over 2 cubed, which is 27 over 8. Okay, so that's 27 over 8. Okay. Now, let's have a look at these. This time we'll be using our index laws here. So the square root of x to the fifth, if you remember your index laws, that should be x to the 1/5 there. And no, that's not correct, is it? That's a mistake. That's a mistake there. Okay, so we're going to write this as x to the fifth. Square root is power of the half, of course, that's better. So, and 5 times a half is just 5 over 2. So x to the 5 on 2 there. And this one here, well, cube root is power of a third, isn't it? So we're going to write this as 4x squared minus 1. And that's all squared, right? And it's cube root. So if you think back to your fractional index laws, that should be 2/3 there. Okay. Now, you could also write this as a negative index, so 4x squared minus 1 to the negative 2/3. Okay. That law that I used for this one came on page 1, and it goes like this. You have a to the m, the nth root, that's the same as a to the m on n. That's the index law that I used for this. Okay. And last of all, write without the negative and fractional indices. Okay, so first thing we've got to do is write this as a positive power, r to the 3/5. Right, if you're wondering what index law I used, x to the minus m is 1 over x to the m. And then in other words, we've got to write this in inserted form. So now the denominator always is that little number out the front, so it's the 5th root of r cubed. Okay? Or you could write it in this fashion. The 5th root of r all to the power of 3. Okay? And that is the examples. Okay.